welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the DFO DFS show for Wednesday, February 24th. Hope you guys are all having a good day. Hope you guys had a good night in DFS last night. I feel like the show did a pretty good job last night, produced some pretty good lines, some pretty good value plays. Ottawa 3 specifically seemed like, we were the only people really on them. They were extremely low owned, and they had a really, really good night. So hopefully you guys took that information and ran with it and built some good lineups, won some cash last night. And we're going to try to do the same thing again tonight. While I was, kind of getting off air yesterday, I said that there's a 7-game slate tonight. That's not the case. It's actually only a 5-game slate because 2 games just started here about 17 minutes ago, 5 o'clock. So it's just a 5-game slate for this Wednesday, but a pretty good slate. We were kind of joking around in the DFO premium Discord before we came on here that I don't remember the last time we've had a slate without either, Austin Matthews or Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon. Seems like these guys play every single night, and it always makes for kind of difficult DFS decisions. But let's get into tonight's 5-game slate. Some news just broke as I was coming live that K'Andre Miller was added to the COVID-19 protocol list among a couple players, but he's the only one I believe that I saw on there that is on tonight's slate, so it shouldn't. He should be the only one that affects tonight's slate. Again, if you guys are new to the show, feel free to drop any comments in the comment section, and I will answer any of your questions you've got throughout the show. Yesterday, I did have a disconnection issue. Again, I don't have the strongest internet out here in the Canadian boonies, so bear with me if something like that happens again, but we'll try to go strong here. But anyway, let's get into it. 5-game slate starts with Philadelphia and the New York Rangers. Brian Elliott starts for the Flyers, and Igor Shesterkin starts for the Rangers. Michael Hutchinson and David Rittich expected to go head-to-head again. A bit bizarre the other night. We had Anderson and Markstrom confirmed, and they both got ruled out, right before warm-up started, and it ended up being Hutchinson and Rittich. I did call for a letdown game or a trap game, whatever you want to call it, from the Maple Leafs, and it worked. Rittich posted a shutout, so I know I played him at 0.5% ownership, which was pretty interesting. But all in all, Toronto looked pretty good, but we'll break down all that stuff as we go along here. Let's continue with the goalies. First, Darcy Kemper confirmed for the Arizona Coyotes. Anaheim did not hold a formal skate this morning, so unclear who starts for them. I would imagine it's John Gibson, although Ryan Miller hasn't started in a while, so we'll have to see there. I guess I probably should have looked into it. I don't know when Anaheim's next back-to-back is, but 2 games left here. Colorado, Philip Grubauer, and the Wild will stick with Kaapo Kähkönen. And then the final game of the night, it is Jordan Bennington for the Blues. Cal Peterson expected to start for the Kings. The Ducks don't have a back-to-back this week. So, honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if Ryan Miller gets to start soon. He hasn't played in a while that I can remember. So don't be shocked there. But, obviously, most of the time we expect John Gibson to start. But, okay, so if you guys, are interested in getting all this information to you much earlier in the day, if you're new to the show, all this information here in this in this Google Sheet can be available by becoming a DFO Premium subscriber, which you can do by going under Optimizer and clicking the red Go Premium button. You can do that for as little as $9.99 for a week, $19.99 for the month. You get all of this information much earlier in the day, as well as a lineup optimizer, and you get to join our premium Discord channel where we talk about DFS all day long, talk about who we like, who we're fading, where we expect ownership to be, and any late breaking news like the other night with Markstrom and Anderson going out in warmups. I made sure I went to the Discord channel immediately, let everybody know just to make sure you guys can get those guys out of your lineup. So definitely another helpful little tool, and you guys can get all this if you join TFO Premium. So if you haven't already, please do. And before I break things down, please make sure if you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube channel, smash that like button. It helps a lot. So with all of that out of the way, let's get into it. So it looks like Philadelphia is in a pretty good spot tonight. They're going to get a lot of their players back, at least some of them. Claude Giroux is going to be back tonight, as you can see here, lining up on the second line with Kevin Hayes and Nolan Patrick will move to the wing. The top line will feature James Van Riemsdyk, Sean Couturier, and Joel Farabee. So they both grade out with almost identical 5v5 scores. While the Flyers are seemingly getting healthier, the Rangers are kind of falling apart. As I mentioned, K'Andre Miller's out. If you guys missed it, Artemi Panarin is taking a leave of absence with some issues he's got going on with the Russian government. I'm not going to comment on that stuff because I don't want to get involved. But he's out for them. So this lineup is looking a little bit sketchy for the Rangers. Capo Caco's out with COVID-19 protocol as well. So this lineup is looking pretty rough tonight. When Panarin went out the first time, Lafreniere and Kako were able to kind of boost Strome up a little bit. But tonight with Kreider and Blackwell, that looks like a line that's going to struggle pretty mightily. And then this Vandenjad line really hasn't got anything going. And then now the problem is, before when they had Panarin on a separate line, the other team had to choose who they wanted to match Couturier up against. In this case with it being the Flyers. But now with the way this lineup looks, like it's going to be Couturier, out there against Zibanejad, since it's the Flyers it's a Flyers home game. Couturier against Zibanejad all night, and that's going to be really, really difficult for them to get anything going. And then the rest of this lineup, is probably going to struggle, like they pretty much have for the entirety of this season. So it just doesn't look great. It makes it a lot easier for the Flyers to match Couturier up against Zibanejad, and then that's obviously not a great matchup. So that's why you see here the Rangers top line grades out as their best line, but also as a below average line on the play, as you can see with the negative 5v5 score. So if we look at the matchups, as I mentioned, Philly won, expected to go head to head with the Zibanejad line most of the night. They are going to see a sprinkling of Ryan Strome's line as well. But mostly the Zibanejad line, the Hayes line will go up against Strome. And then the third line will see a good bit of whatever the Flyers third or whatever the Rangers third line is. I think it's the Brett Howden line now. But the Flyers third line is kind of a hodgepodge unit as well. It's going to be, Connor Bunnaman, Michael Raffle, Nick Aube-Kubel. It's a familiar look. It's a line that they've had a lot in the past, but it's a line that's usually reserved for their fourth line. But they have been a very effective checking line. So that, if you were thinking at all about playing New York Rangers 3, that matchup is going to take them out of the equation. So if we move over, look at the stats, none of these lines in this game really jump off the page too much. The best offensive numbers do come from the Kevin Hayes, Claude Giroux, Nolan Patrick line, but they're not, overly flattering. I mean, 2.56 expected goals for, solid, 25 scoring chances for, 11 high danger. Definitely above average on tonight's slate. If we look at the O score, which takes all those numbers into account, they are the 11th best offensive score on the night. So, a pretty decent line, but nothing that's crazy good. It's the same goes with the top line. Not overwhelming numbers, but solid, and good enough to definitely take advantage of this, banged up Rangers unit. So the reason that the Flyers grade out so well, even with those modest numbers, their usage is really good, 30%, 28%, really good usage. And then obviously these numbers from the Rangers are terrible. Primarily that second line, that Ryan Strome line without Kako, without Lafreniere, without Panarin, it just looks absolutely disastrous. So my preferred play tonight from Philadelphia would be that second line, just because that matchup with the Strome line should be very easy for them to win. The only thing to consider, though, when thinking about playing Philadelphia, obviously the matchup is much better for Philadelphia too, but Philadelphia 1, the way that they've got their power plays laid out right now, Philadelphia 1 does correlate 100% on the top power play unit. So Van Riemsdyk, Couturier, Farabee, all in the top power play unit together. So that definitely it makes them extremely intriguing. Probably provides them with a higher ceiling than Philadelphia 2. The matchup's just not quite as good. So 2 lines to definitely consider tonight. The only issue with Philadelphia 1, in addition to the matchup, it is their increased price. James Van Riemsdyk has been priced way up to $6,500. Couturier and Farabee, decently priced. Couturier, especially at $5,700. Farabee at $5,500 is a little bit high, but his shot volume has been really consistent lately, so you can kind of get behind that. On the other side, obviously, a couple of $1,000 cheaper to full stack Philadelphia 2 and a better matchup. So, I like the power play upside, but it does look like Philadelphia 2 is in a little bit of a better spot tonight. But as you can see by the 5v5 score, both grade out very, very good. Or very, very well, I should say. To talk about the power play for a little bit, Philadelphia has a negative power play score, one of the worst power play scores on the night. That's just because the power play isn't very good, and the Rangers penalty kill has been really good. So, from a 5v5 perspective, they should dominate this game. It doesn't look like they've got too much going for them on the man advantage, though. Second game of the night, Toronto and Calgary. So, I kind of talked about it a little bit at the top of the show. I did expect to see a letdown game from the Leafs the other night, and it happened, right? They got shut out by David Riddick, but as much as I want to take praise for that, it wasn't really what happened. The Leafs still, for the most part, dominated that game at 5v5. The Flames, like, it's not like the Flames went out there and did anything special other than David Riddick playing extremely well. They got handled pretty well at 5v5. Their 5v5 numbers were not very good, and then the Leafs just couldn't convert. So, maybe the fact that they're coming off of that game, that could, maybe keep ownership down a little bit. I wouldn't expect it. But, given their price, they're continuing increasing price. Obviously, Matthews is going to be super high owned, but you can get, Marner at slightly discounted ownership, I think. Much lower than Matthews at least. So I think the one way to get different with Toronto one tonight is just completely full stack them, play Hyman, play Marner, and hope that they go off tonight. So I don't, obviously the other night was kind of a bit bizarre, but they did have a ton of chances. They just had a hard time converting on those chances. And when you're talking about a team as talented as Toronto is, it's not something you're going to expect to see out of them very often. So I expect a really big performance from Toronto one tonight. They're obviously grayed out extremely well at 5v5. If we want to look at their matchup, they're going to go head-to-head for the most part against the Elias Lindholm line. The Lindholm line is very good. They're only giving up 24 scoring chances against per 60. They're pretty solid. They're really good at 5v5 in terms of generating offense. They dominate the possession battle, but Toronto 1's numbers with Hyman on that line, back on that line, are much better than they were the other night without Hyman. So 36 scoring chances for, 3.2 expected goals for per 60. Really, really, really good numbers, obviously. So I'm not going to, pump Toronto 1's tires anymore. They're already going to be super chalky. You guys are already probably thinking about playing them. I don't think I need to talk them up anymore. In terms of Toronto 2, Tavares back in that center position there after starting last game on Matthews' wing. Kerfoot moving into that line. Their numbers just really aren't that great offensively. Kerfoot hasn't boosted their numbers like you'd hope to see. He's kind of more of a two-way forward anyway, so it not like all that surprising, but their numbers, really aren't that good. They're, actually losing the possession battle right now. And really not producing a whole lot. So I don't have a lot of interest in Toronto 2 tonight. And their matchup, really isn't that great either, right? They're going to see 46% of their ice time is going to come against the Michael Backlund line. Backlund known for being one of the better two-way centers in the league. Obviously, his line's numbers take a little bit of a hit with Mangiapane on the top line, but still not a great matchup for Tavares, who's been struggling as of late. On the other side of the coin, Calgary 1 has been heating up. Matthew Tkachuk has kind of found his game in recent games. Elias Lindholm is really, really nicely priced at 5,500. Mangiapane, always a guy that I like. Obviously, Mangiapane is the guy that you can leave off of this stack if you want to go in with the Tkachuk Lindholm mini because they correlate on the power play. That's completely fine. They look like the only line really worth targeting from the Calgary perspective. The Monahan line, when Sam Bennett is on the wing, really isn't getting anything going offensively. They actually grade out with a negative offensive score tonight, worse than even the Michael Backlund line. But so really not a whole lot of interest in Calgary 2 or Toronto 2. It looks like kind of the top lines are bust in this game. And while I do love Mangiapane and what he brings to the line, he doesn't bring quite as much from a DFS perspective. Obviously, we were playing him quite a bit when he was with Backlund, and he was like 3,400 at 4,500. It's probably a little bit too rich for me. Pretty quiet in here today. Yeah, it is surprising. I had a pretty good night last night. I thought we'd have a big crowd today, but that's all right. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them and I will get to them. If not, the 57 of you that are here, we will continue to break down these games and give you guys the advantage. It's everybody else's loss, right? So let's keep rolling on here. Arizona and Anaheim. So this was a pretty interesting game the other night. We were on Anaheim. I liked Trevor Zieger at minimum price. He looked terrific. I'm definitely going back to Trevor Zieger tonight. He's 2,700, so he's gone up a couple $100, but definitely looked, every bit a top prospect in the league. Some of the just incredible vision on him, ripping passes through the seams, especially on the power play. So it's only a matter of time before he gets on the scoreboard. Obviously, a bit of a disappointing output the other night, but he looked good. And I think with each passing game, his usage will continue to rise. And like I mentioned last week or last game, whenever it was, Monday, I think, Sam Steele and Jakob Silfverberg have really, really good numbers together. So adding Zegras to that line only helps. And then he's just going to be an absolute force on the power play. Ducks did go off to a 3-0 lead. I played a lot of John Gibson. I was pretty excited about it. It looked like they were going to coast to a win, blew it, lost 4-3. Super unfortunate, is what it is though. But yeah, both of these teams are expected to ice the exact same lineups as they did the other night. They did break up Arizona's top line. Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz stayed together. Garland dropped to the Kessel line, but then they were back together at practice yesterday. So I do expect to see them together tonight. They still grade out as the best line to target on the slate, or on this, not the slate, sorry, in this game. But not as overwhelmingly high as they have been in recent games. So at their still super high price tag, I think it is going to be difficult to get to Arizona 1 again tonight. As I mentioned, they do dominate puck possession, they do dominate scoring chance battle, but they don't normally score 2 or 3 goals and kind of break a slate for you. So that's the bit of a concern. Obviously, if Ryan Miller ends up getting the start tonight instead of John Gibson, that would boost Arizona 1's upside considerably. And maybe they can get that 2-goal game, but you really just don't see it a whole lot. So I think at $6,900 for Garland, it is just a little bit too expensive. I mean, you're talking about him basically being the same price as Mikko Rantanen. And that's going to be tough to pay for. And you're not, really not going to get that 3-point game, most likely, like you could get out of Rantanen. The Anaheim's top line, I have listed as the Raquel line. He's been, pretty snake bitten, just can't seem to find it. But he's been all around it. So I do think it's kind of only a matter of time. I do like Raquel a lot as like a cash game play. His shot volume has been terrific. The usage has been through the roof. I don't really know if I'm going to full stack this line. Comtois and Lindstrom are fine. They are both seeing some power play time, but Raquel is kind of just like the one-off play on that line that I think I want to target in cash. If I'm going to stack a line in this game, I think it's still going to be Anaheim 2. The price is just too good. Trevor Zieger is $2,700, as I mentioned. Obviously, a lot of upside on the power play, is on the top power play unit. Looked like he was a focal point. Did only play 13 minutes the other night. You'd like to see that come up a bit. But at $2,700, it's hard to get that kind of that many touches on the top power play unit as he does. Sam Steele, $3,100. Not the same concern that you have with Zegers. He played 20 minutes the other night, so his usage is through the roof. Silverberg scored the other night, so I do like Anaheim 2 quite a bit as like the best full stack in this game. I think their usage is really good. Their matchup is pretty solid. If we want to take a look at that, they're going to see 39% of the Schmaltz line. So obviously Schmaltz line has been really good. All of Arizona has been really good defensively. They're difficult to get anything going against, and that's kind of why I'm not targeting this game too much. But it's it is a night with very little value. So I think that the upside that you do get with Anaheim 2 is pretty considerable, and at that price tag, it's kind of worth at least dart throwing with. I just close the chat usually and listen with headphones. Well, thank you. At least you're here. That's all that matters. And Raquel, 0.17 shooting percentage in his last 6 games. Yeah, see, exactly. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he has like the lowest or the highest discrepancy between his expected goals for and he's up there. He's 5th in the league in terms of goals scored above average or above expected. So he's definitely due. I said that about Arvidsson yesterday too. He didn't score, but Raquel's due. He's been all around it. He's been sniffing it. So he is due. And I think he's a terrific cash game option at $4,300. But as a stacking option, I think Anaheim 2 still might prefer, just because it does allow you to play the McKinnons and the Matthews of the world. 4th game of the night. Colorado and Minnesota. I'm sure Colorado will be happy to not have to play Marc-Andre Fleury anymore. He's been just ridiculous. Capo Kakanen's been solid, but he is not Marc-Andre Fleury, that's for sure. Colorado 1 is going to have Gabe Landeskog back on the top line tonight. So definitely an expensive stack. Landeskog at $6,000 is pretty reasonably priced still, though. McKinnon 8,800 is crazy. Rantanen 7,300, super expensive. So obviously playing with them, you're going to have to try to find value elsewhere. It's going to be tough, but they look terrific. They grade out as the best stack on the entire slate tonight. Minnesota 1 has a positive rating as well. Eriksson, Ek, Fiala look really good, but Fiala at 7,100, it's going to be really, really difficult to get there at that that price tag, given who else is on this slate and the fact that Philip Grubauer has just been absolutely lights out all season long. So a little bit less interest in Minnesota 1 tonight than normal. The Avalanche are really, really good. But the one thing that does, make Minnesota 1 interesting, if we want to take a look at it, is they're going to see kind of a mix of the Avalanche top 6 or top 9, sorry. And Brandon Saad is out tonight. Him and his wife are expecting a baby, so that definitely means that the second and third line of the Avalanche is stretched a little bit more thin, and their numbers are definitely going to take a hit. Defensively, Saad and Kadri's numbers are really good together. Without Saad, they are not very good. So definitely looks like an opportunity where Colorado 2 can be a little bit more exploitable tonight than on a normal slate. But overall, it just does not look like a really appealing game to stack Minnesota, especially given the fact that Fiala is up to 7,100, Eriksson at 5,400. It's just a little too expensive for really what their upside is going to be in this game. On the other side, Colorado 1 is going to see the majority of the second and third line of the Wild, which means they're going to avoid Eriksson Ek as much as possible, and that's really good. Although the second and third lines numbers are pretty solid as well. So it does look like it could be a bit of a sludgy game. Both teams pretty solid defensively, and they are getting healthy, which is the most important part, specifically from the Minnesota side of things. They're full blue lines back together. So it doesn't look like a game that's going to turn into a huge shootout. But Colorado 1 is obviously very appealing. Those numbers with Gabe Landeskog back on the top line, the best all across the board on this entire slate. So obviously, again, I'm not going to talk too much about these top lines. They're obviously going to be chalky, but fading them is, I'm just basically here to remind you that fading them is incredibly risky tonight. If I had to pick between the two, it is difficult. I would probably go with Colorado 1, though. I think Toronto 1's ownership is going to be still pretty high, especially Matthews. So I think that you'll get Colorado 1 at slightly lower ownership than you will get Toronto 1. So I do prefer Colorado 1 as a full stack as opposed to Toronto 1, just to try to get off of that chalk a little bit. But they're both obviously going to be very popular. On the rest of these lines really don't look all that appealing. I hate to kind of just mention that it's all top lines for most of these games, but that really kind of looks like what it is tonight. A lot of these other depth lines, a lot of these teams are battling injuries. They just aren't very appealing. So you're going to have to get different. I think that obviously Philly's, second line is a way to, save some salary, but the rest of it's going to be tough. You're going to have to find your value at D, I think. I think you're going to have to find your value in maybe Anaheim too. We can talk about, though, the last game too, where there should be some value. I have mentioned that, the St. Louis second line was a favorite of mine, and they really have been terrible since Jaden Schwartz went out. That really has not changed. Jordan Kyrou will drop back to that line tonight with Braden Shen and Mike Hoffman. It definitely boosts their numbers a little bit, but still not very good. This is what St. Louis is going to run with tonight. Just leave that up there for a quick second. So, as you can see here, St. Louis 2's numbers still not very good. 21 scoring chances for. Putting Sammy Blais on the O'Reilly line doesn't do anything for them either. 21 scoring chances where both those lines look not very good. And the Kings have been kind of hot right now. So the Blues are they're so banged up. Still no Colton Parayko. It's going to be tough sledding for them. No Jaden Schwartz. A lot, they're missing a ton of bodies in this lineup. Not that Carl Gunnarsson's a huge loss, but Ivan Barbashev hurt, Thomas hurt, Bozak hurt, Tarasenko hurt, Jaden Schwartz. They're just so banged up. So it's really hard to get excited about the Blues right now. But on the flip side of that, Cal Peterson is priced as if the Blues are still a powerhouse, and it's just not really the case right now. So 6,900 for Cal Peterson definitely looks like one of the most intriguing prices on this entire slate. A slate that I've mentioned is really devoid of a lot of value. So I think that he's kind of a spot, you can put Peterson and maybe punt a couple defensemen. Maybe you plug like a Zegras in there, or Zegras and Steele, whatever it is. And then that allows you to pay up for some of these other really, really good options. I think that's the way you're going to have to kind of go tonight. That looks like, it's hard to find value. So to find value in Cal Peterson, who's played very well this season against a really hurt Blues team, I think that's kind of the way to get some value tonight. Obviously I expect him to be largely popular as well. I think that he could even be the highest owned goaltender on the entire slate tonight. So obviously, other people are going to be interested in playing him at that price too, but it looks too good to be true with how banged up St. Louis is. So if you want to, fade some of the chalk, make some contrarian lineups, the top lines to stack in this game, the only one that actually grades out with a positive score is the Kings top line. And they've been pretty hot, right? They've played well. Dustin Brown, I think, just had a 2-goal performance the other night. He had, 2 goals on 2 shots. He's got 4 goals in his last 4 games, 10 goals in the season. For whatever reason, that line, just seems to continue to produce, a really resurgent season from Anze Kopitar, 21 points in 17 games. Drew Doughty's looked really, really good. So they're a way to get some discounted ownership and fade the chalk a little bit. I think they're kind of interesting just because of how banged up the Blues are, but they are still just going to go. They're going to go head to head with Ryan O'Reilly, so that is going to be tough sledding for both of those lines. It could be a very low event game, and I expect it to be in that, especially that matchup. So, I mean, overall, it's not a game that I'm targeting. It doesn't look like a game that has a whole lot of appeal from a DFS perspective, and you don't want to just try to get contrarian and then you play a game where the shots are 21-19 and it doesn't provide you with anything and you still lose money, right? So obviously getting different is a way to cash big, but sometimes it's tonight it looks like you're going to have to find ways to make weird lineups with the chalk to try to get different that way, because there's not a whole lot of value on this slate. There really isn't, at least not very obvious value. Like yesterday I looked at Ottawa 3 and I was like, oh my God, they look amazing. This is a tremendous spot. The 3,700 plug and play them and they hit. Where tonight it's like, it's hard to find value. So let's talk about the goalies. Obviously, I talked about Peterson. Blais in cash, no, not really. Like I said, that's going to be a pretty low event game just because he's on the top line. Like that O'Reilly line really hasn't been doing a whole lot. I mean, obviously, like you can play him if you need the salary relief at 2,500, but he's not a guy that really produces a whole lot offensively. Doesn't shoot the puck a lot. I mean, you can play him if you need the salary relief. He's probably one of the best minimum priced forwards tonight, but like I'd prefer Zegras, probably even Lundestrom at minimum price over Blais tonight. Like Lundestrom is, obviously not a super offensive weapon either, but even Lafreniere is probably better at that point. So yeah, this is just a snapshot of the top lines to target tonight. It's hard to fade the chalk when it's these top guys. And like normally, these guys come out on top and they're at the top of the list and at least the scores are close. Tonight, it's not. It's like Colorado 1 and Toronto 1 are so clearly better than everybody on tonight's slate that it's going to be very difficult to fade them. Fowler, Zuccarello seems like semi-good value. Yeah, so I think that Minnesota second line is going to probably be a little bit popular tonight because they had such a good game the other night. So obviously their value-wise, it's really good. Like I do love Kaprizov at 4,600. He's just way too cheap, and he is a difference maker. But this is not really a line that's got that much going for them. Offensively, the numbers aren't great. They're just kind of playing a very low event game. And between Zuccarello, Kaprizov, and Victor Rask, like none of those guys are shooters, right? So it's hard to envision them really popping off again. It's a much harder matchup against Colorado too. So I think they're going to be relatively popular, maybe like the most popular value line because of what they did last game and the fact that Kaprizov's a stud and he's super cheap. But I don't love them, to be honest with you, but obviously Zuccarello has looked really, really good since coming back. I think the one issue with them is, like I mentioned last game, like they're the power plays. Like what are they doing? They're just putting out their lines in their deep pairs. It's so weird. It's like how do you target that from a DFS perspective? So I think that they're definitely going to be the most popular value, and I don't love it. So, if I'm going to be playing getting chalky with my lineups at the top, I definitely don't want to be chalky at the bottom. So they are a good value, no question about it. I just am not in love with it. Value lines seem tough tonight. Yeah, 100%. Like they are. There's not a whole lot. So, maybe a way to, if you want to just fade the chalk completely, is play like Toronto 2 and just try to, hopefully they win that game still, but it's Toronto 2 that does the damage as opposed to Toronto 1. But there's very, very little value on tonight's slate. There was tons of value in the 5 o'clock games. So it's like all that value got sucked into the 2 early games and left us nothing here. One thing I didn't point out, Toronto did reshape their power play units ahead of tonight's game again. So this is a way to get some value, I suppose, if you're playing Toronto 1, is to play Travis Boyd. He's back on the top unit tonight as they go back to kind of 2 spread out units, but he's still 3,600. So it's not like you're punching him at mid price. You're still paying a decent chunk of change for a guy that's playing on the 4th line at 5v5. So It's not a whole lot of value. If we want to talk about defensemen to try to find some value, I'll start at the top first. Like, I love Devon Taves, one of my favorite defensemen in the entire NHL, just from just an everyday hockey player. And he's just a good way to get off of Cale Makar and save some salary. He's obviously 5,500, so he's not super cheap, but to get off Cale Makar and save that $1,000, it's a big difference on tonight's slate. So I do like him quite a bit. Jonas Brodin, he's just super steady. He seems solid. I wish he was closer to 4,000, but 4,600 is still a pretty good price for him. I like that. Travis Sanheim, 3,600. He's a good way to get exposure to the Philadelphia blue line. Just a guy that's always super consistent. Obviously I would like to play some other guys that are going to see more power play usage. But Provorov, 6,100. It's almost impossible to get there if you're playing any of the high price lines. Gostisbehere, 4,800, and Gustafsson at 4,500 both seem pretty expensive for kind of what they offer. So I think Sanheim is probably my preferred option there. Myers is fine too, one of those two, 35 and 3,600. Justin Hall, I feel like I mention him literally every single episode. And he's 3,300. If you're playing Toronto 1, he's kind of the guy you want to go with. I did mention Travis Dermott last week, or like last time they played. He busted for us. He literally baggled. But still 2,500, still going to see quite a bit. His usage was only 11 minutes. Like, I don't know why that happened. So I'd probably avoid that. I'd probably just go right back to Hall tonight. Chris Tanev, just a shot blocking machine. If it ends up being anything like last game where Calgary does get hemmed in quite a bit, obviously he's going to be on the ice for a lot of shots against. Obviously not going to provide you with a whole lot of offensive upside, just 3 points in 19 games. But I would say the most likely player on this entire slate to hit the 3 block bonus. So I do like Tanev a lot. And you can pair him with Toronto 1 and just hope that, every time that they don't get a shot on net, it just goes off of his shin pads. He plays a ton, 26 minutes the other night, 22 in each of the 2 previous games before that. If you want to pay down a little bit, from him, but stick with Calgary, I do like Noah Hannafin. He's only 2,700. His shot volume has been pretty steady. Obviously he's never really blossomed into the guy a lot of people expected, but from a DFS point of view at 2,700, he does offer a pretty stable floor for some, given the usage and his shot volume. And then 2 defensemen from Anaheim that are mid-priced. You can go with Ben Hutton, perhaps. He provides a little bit more in terms of like the shooting, potentially some offensive numbers, but then his D partner in Jakob Larsson, he's fine too. He is going to be more of the shot blocker. I prefer Larsson a little bit, but both of them pair well at 5v5 with Anaheim too. So if you're like, let's say you're going to go crazy and you're going to try to like put in some combination of like Toronto 1 and Colorado 1, and you got to just get super punty, like you can do something like Larson and Zegras and Steele or something like that, and try to just cram everybody in. Like, they're not obviously super high upside, but their floor seems pretty decent. So I think that is a reasonable option. We do have some questions here. David says Mintu. I kind of just talked about that. I don't know if you caught it. I think they're going to be like the most popular value, and it's not like they jump off the page to me where it's something I want to jump all over. JVR or Farabee, probably Farabee just because he's cheaper. JVR is just priced way up because of what he's done, but his shooting percentage is just ridiculous. Like, he's not even shooting a lot. He's just scoring every time he shoots. And he's an outdoor game god. So he had 3 points in the outdoor game, boosted his salary. So he's 6,500. Farabee's 5,500. That $1,000 can go a long way tonight. So Farabee for me. Zibanejad is due for a big game. I mean, I've been saying that for weeks, and everybody has. Like, it has to happen. Tonight is not the night, I don't think. While he's probably due, yeah, he 100% is. But going head-to-head with Sean Couturier the entire night is not the ideal setup and not a matchup I'm chasing on a slate like this. So, I think Zibanejad is going to break out eventually. He needs Panarin to get back, though. Whenever that is, who knows? Ryan Lindgren. Yeah, his usage is pretty solid. I think that Lindgren is more appealing now because Keandre Miller's out. So that blue line is going to be a nightmare tonight. So Lindgren and Adam Fox should play a ton. He is 2,800. He's blocked 4 shots in each of his last 2 games. He's definitely somebody with that news of Miller. I didn't write him down earlier because Miller was still in. But yeah, with that injury, like those two could play 30 minutes tonight. So I do like Lindgren quite a bit. Kings D-man to take advantage of PP. I do like Matt Roy from the Kings D-man perspective. He's 3,200. He's been really, really, really consistent lately. Plays over 20 minutes every single night. Blocks at least 2 shots, like it seems every game. Gets a couple shots on net. So he provides probably the most stable floor on the entire slate at 3,200. If you're kind of talking about the power, how the Kings have a power play advantage here, what you're basically looking at is basically playing Drew Doughty, unfortunately. And he's too expensive for the most part. So Matt Roy would be your next best option. He does quarterback the second power play unit. So he looks like the best Kings D-man outside of Doughty, but you're probably not going to have the salary to pay for him. Can we put a coin on Zieger? I don't know what that means, to be honest with you. I'm assuming that means that's a good thing. And I'm going to say yes, because he's scoring tonight. Or at least getting an assist. Thank you again, Brock. As always, make sure you guys smash the like button. Go Red Wings. The Red Wings can lose forever. They had Franz Nielsen on the top line today. But yeah, let's talk about goalies. Do I like Darcy Kemper at goalie tonight? I always like Darcy Kemper. He's awesome. I don't know. I do like Brian Elliott a lot. I mentioned I do think the Flyers have a big game tonight. They're back, at least somewhat healthy, and they should run all over this Rangers team. I think there's just too much going on in New York right now. Like I mentioned, like without Keandre Miller, that blue line's going to be in shambles. So Brian Elliott at 7,600 looks really solid. He's had a pretty good year, all things considered. He's been better than Carter Hart for the most part. So I do like Brian Elliott quite a bit, 7,600. And you need to kind of pay down at goalie tonight, I think. No interest really in going back to Riddick. I think that it's going to be tough for him to replicate that performance. So I prefer Cal Peterson at 6,900, a couple $100 cheaper. So really no interest in either going that game. Imagine paying $8,000 for Michael Hutchinson. That'd be crazy. Kemper, yeah, I think he's fine, but I think a lot of my value is going to come from Anaheim tonight. So I'm probably not going to play a lot of Kemper. At $400 cheaper, you can get Brian Elliott. So I think that would be my preferred path than playing Kemper at that price tonight. Grubauer obviously is solid. He's the most expensive going on the slate, so it's going to be really hard to get there, but you should get him at really, I would imagine pretty low ownership. I'm not normally one to brag about my ability to nail down ownership. I kind of just guess and hope I'm right. Most of the time I've been pretty accurate, but I wouldn't say that I'm 100%. So take what I say with a grain of salt, because there's really no real good ownership projections out there. So I think Grubauer, if you can afford it, is a strong option. He's just been so good. And this is a game that should definitely win. Kakkonen, definitely not. I love Colorado won tonight, so I'm not going there. And then I mentioned Cal Peterson at 6,900. Definitely terrific. Bennington at 8,300 is just too expensive for what's going on in front of him. So I think I'm going to probably go the cheap goalie route tonight, and that's how I'm going to get my value, because there's very little elsewhere. So I think my two favorite are going to be Cal Peterson and Brian Elliott tonight. 8,200 for Kemper on FanDuel. Yeah, that seems pricey. I forgot to look at FanDuel today, so I can't help too much. If you want to mention 6,900 for Peterson, yeah, and 7,900 for Elliott, yeah, I prefer both those guys on FanDuel still. Kemper may not get enough shots to make him viable at that price of 8,200. Yeah, that's always an issue too. Definitely a concern with Anaheim. So yeah, I prefer the other guys a little bit, but I'll leave. I'm about to hit the 40-minute mark here, so I'll put up the top stack so you guys can take a look at that as we kind of drink a beer and head out of here. I wish I knew what put a coin on Zegers meant. Am I just stupid? Like, does everybody else know what that means and I'm just out of the loop? I am going to be 30 this year. Maybe I'm just not smart. Maybe I'm just old. I'm not hip anymore. Can we put a coin on Zegers? I don't know what that means. Nobody knows? That's good. All right. Well, yeah, that's going to do it for today's DFO DFS show, unless somebody pops up in the chat in the next 30 seconds. Let me know what the hell that means. Yeah, tomorrow, probably a pretty sizable slate. It is a Thursday. I guess it's always fun to count how many games the next day has. Also, what's going on in these early games? Anybody know? 2-0 Tampa. Blake Coleman. Let's go. 1-0 Dallas. Put a Bitcoin on him. You can do that. Yeah, I mean, to do what? Get a point? Sure. 3 players under 2,800 in a line is nerve-wracking. Oh my god, yeah, it's horrifying. Like no question about it. But like I think you could do worse than having Zegras at 2,700, and then like let's say like Larson at 2,500. Like I think their floor is okay. Like Larson could block 3 shots, provide you with a little something. And then Zegras, if he picks up an apple, he pays off, right? So I think those two are a little bit less risky. There's a couple options down there, but yeah, like no question about it, it's terrifying. But on a night where there's very little options, that's a good way to get different, is just to make your lineup, just a total stars and scrubs lineup. Zegras is so cheap, we can pay for him with spare coins. Yeah, maybe that's what it means. I don't know. But all right, I'm going to head out of here. I'm going to shut whoever this guy is off. But yeah, I'm out of here. So be back here tomorrow. I forgot to count how many games there are, but be back here tomorrow, same time, same place, 5:15 for a however many game slate there is for Thursday. If you're not already, obviously, smash that like button, subscribe for DFO Premium, come talk hockey with us in the Discord channel. You get, again, all this stuff. Like, obviously, it's great to get this right now, but now you have 1 hour to build your lineups as opposed to, getting it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You could have already had your lineups built. You could have had your feet up, drinking a beer right now instead of doing this. So anyways, good luck to everybody tonight. Build some winning lineups. Come back here with more cash than you have in your pocket today, and we'll see you guys here then.